Alright, today we're going to talk about the basics of Python numbers. We're going to go over the basic math. So we're going to talk about the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, finding the remainder, finding cubed values, and finding root values. And we move on to kind of briefly show factorials and summations, and show more complex stuff with the quadratic. So if that sounds good, let's get started. Alright, so go over with the basic numbers. What's going to happen here is we have the integer. So that's going to be just something like 7 would be an integer, or even 5 would be an integer. So just a regular number. A float is going to be anything with a decimal, so we can do like a 3.5 or 4.5. We can do a 2.7, and that would be a float. So if we're looking at the more complex types, we can do something like 3 plus 4j and represents that. Now if I run this cell by hitting shift enter, or going up to my run and I can hit run the selected cell, but I'm just going to use the shift plus enter in my demos. So if I hit shift plus enter, that's going to show me that it's an integer, shows me the next one's a float, and it's complex. So the integer is in this a value, this b value, the float, and the complex is in this complex form. Now if I want to print the c, for example, which is the complex, I can run that, and then I have the 3 plus 4j. So it's pretty simple. And again, if I want to do like a, it's a 5. B, we'll go back to the 2.7. And then again, for the complex, we have the C up there, so it does show complex formulas. So going down here to the basic math, we go down here and we can do addition. So we can do something like print 7 plus 3, and then that should give us a 10. So that's just really basic addition right there. Now if I wanted to do a total numbers of a sum, so I could do something like numbers equals, and then I'll put these numbers in a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then after I put the numbers in the list, I can do a total equals sum, and then just sum up those numbers just like this. And then I can do print the total, and I can run this, and that's going to give me 15. So that's 5, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So those are two different ways that we can actually sum. The next operation that we're going to end up doing is we'll do the print again, and we'll do simple subtraction. So we can do 7 minus 3, and we can run that, and that would give us a 4. If I wanted to change that and do a multiplication, I can just take this minus out and do the star, and that's going to represent multiplication, and I can run that again and I get 21. Now with division, what we can end up doing is we'll do 7 divided by 3, and we run this, it gives us that 2.3333 all the way out. Now if we just want to do the floor division and just getting the absolute bottom, we can just hit 2 slashes, and that would give us a 2. Pretty simple. Now if we wanted to get what that remainder is, because we know that like if we take the number and divide it, it really would be 6, and then we'll actually have a remainder of 1. We can sit there and do the percentage sign, and that's just going to give us the remainder, and we got the remainder of 1 up there. Okay, so let's say that I want the answer and the remainder. So like 7 divided by 3 would be 2, and then we'll have 1 as the remainder. So I could do something like this. I could do print 7 and then do my //3 to get my floor division. And I can run this and I get a 2 and a 1. Or what I can end up doing is I can just do a print and then do a div mod. And then I can say 7, 3. And run that. And I forgot my extra closing bracket up there, or closing parenthesis. And then I got up there, and that's 2 and a 1. So I can just do it in one command. Okay? Alright, so the next thing that I want to show you is, let's do exponents. So like the 7 to the power of the 3, right? So we can set there, and it's kind of like this, like, right, 7 to the power of 3. So what we can end up doing is, how do we do that in Python? Well, we can do the print, and we can do the 7, and then 2 stars, and a 3, and that's going to give us the exponent. So 7 to the exponent to the third. Okay? Another way to do this, and they give us the same answer, we could do a print, and we can end up doing the POW, and we're doing 7, 3, and then I remember to close out my parentheses this time, and we have 343 and 343 because we get that print and that print. So that's 2 different ways we can do exponents. Alright, so how do we do math with negative numbers? Well, pretty simple. We can do the print and then a -5 plus 3, for example, and we can run that and it gives us a -2. So it does handle negatives inside your math problems. Now another thing we can do is, we have plus 5 plus 3, which gives us 8, but if we do a -3, right, and run this, we get a 2. Okay? Now I can change this 3 and 5 around, and we can kind of go back, and that's going to give us a -2. So we can sit there and do the negative. Now if you want to be a little bit more clean, you could do it like this and add parentheses around your negative number and run it, and it's going to give you the same result. So if you just kind of want it to look nicer or kind of keep it separate, you can do that as well. The other thing that we can do is, if we want the absolute value of something, so we have ABS for the absolute value, and let's say we have a -5, and then make sure it's closed, and we run that, and that's going to give us a 5 because we're doing the absolute value. So if we do this to make our 5 positive, it's the absolute value, so it's still going to give us a 5. Okay? So that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Alright, so one thing I do want to show you here, if I do like a print, and I'm going to do a simple addition here, 3 plus 5, and that's going to give us an 8. But if I do a 0.0, for example, which the answer is going to be 8, it's going to be 8.0, because anytime I take a number and a float and put them together, it's going to return the answer into a float. So I'll have 8.0. So just remember, if you're changing things into a decimal as a float, your integer, and add an integer to it, it's going to come back as a float. Alright, so the next thing I want to show you is how to do the square roots. Okay, so the square roots, we're going to end up using the exponents again. So to do that, if you remember, we'll take a number, and we'll say 16, and we'll do the exponents and get the square root. Since that's kind of half, that's going to be a 0.5, and then that should give us a 4. So there we go, we got the square root of 16, which is a 4. Now, if I want to sit there and do something else, let's say I want to get the cube. Well, I can take this, let's do 27, and then instead of 0.5, since a cube is a third of the number, we can do 1/3, and then we have 9. So it's going to be as simple as that to kind of get the square root and the cube root. The last thing I want to show you, and this is not really a like a math, I guess it is math, but how to round a number. So if I have, let's say, print 2.3, and that's going to print me a 2.3, but I can put a round in front of this, and then it's going to round it to a 2. Now if I change that 2.3 to 2.6, it'll round up to a 3. And that's basically it for the basics of the math operations. Alright, so for the order of operations, as we know, they go parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction in that order. Okay, so for example, if we print 2 plus 3 times 4, okay, what that's going to say is there's no parentheses, there's no exponents, multiplication and divisions. So 3 times 4 is 12, and then addition and subtraction, then that's 13, 14. So we do 3 times 4, and then we do the 2, right? So that's going to be 12, 14. So if I hit Shift Enter, we'll get 14. So let's say that I really wanted this 2 plus 3 first. We put the parentheses here, okay? And once we do that, it's going to be 2 plus 3, which is 5. And then we're going to take times 4, which is 20. Because remember, we do parentheses first. So those are the parentheses. Then we do the multiplication and division. Okay? So we run this, gives us 20. Just like we said. Simple as that. And that's pretty much the basic of the math. Now, with that knowledge, we can do more stuff. I got some stuff pre-written here for we don't have to go through everything. So if I look here and I got the factorial, for example, so you might see like, 5 factorial, which is this right here. And that'd be the same as 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, and that would give us 120. So basically, we already have a function already put in here, and I'll go over functions in another video. And then we got here with the factorial 5. So basically, we're calling factorial, which is going to bring us up here to the function. This 5 right here is going to be this n. So this is really for I in range, and that's going to be 2 n, which is 5 plus 1, which is 6. And that's going to go us through the 5 steps. So that's pretty much what that's going to end up doing for us. And then you got the, I put the print I just kind of show you how it will run through the different numbers. And then we have the results, which is the multiplication equals 1. So we take the results times, right, will equal I. So this is basically result times I, okay? And that's going to be, 5 times 4 times 3 times 2, and that's going to be down here. That's what that times equal. So it's really kind of like, looks like this. Results, times I, right? Equals, like, new results, right? So it's going to be something like that is what it's going to look like. But this is just kind of a shortcut for that. So then we have return results, and then we have which returns the answer back down here is all that's doing. So if I run this, this will give us 120. So going through this, that's 2, 3, 4, 5 because we started with 2, right? And then the next number would be 3, 4, 5. And again, it stops. It doesn't go to 6, even though 5 plus 1 is 6, because it will stop because it's not going through that last iteration. So that's what that's doing down there. Okay? So the next thing we have is the summations, and this is a sigma notification. And, that just looks really complex right up there. And this right here is that kind of spelled out, 1 to the power of 2 plus 2 to the power of 2 plus 3 to the power of 2 plus 4 to the power of 2. That's basically what this is doing up here. It has everything up in there. So that's pretty simple. If I go down here, this is what it looks like in the math program. And again, it would take the values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'll stop before the 6. 1 is the starting value. 6 is like the last value, but you're not really going to 6. You're stopping at the number before that. And then this is the same thing. We're taking the total and we're adding I to the second power, or to the second component, to this total right here. And then we're going to print it out, which is going to give us the answer 55. So we can do more complex math. We just got to write this out a little bit. And the last part down here is this quadratic. And this is basically like function x equals, ax to the second power plus bx plus c. This is the same thing with the formula. We're calling the quadratic, which calls it up here. This 1, -3, 2, and 4 gets passed into a, b, c, and x respectively. And then, we return the formula down here, which is basically the same formula as it up here, but it's written out in Python where it can read it. And the purpose of showing this is not to kind of teach you the formula, but to show you that you can do complex stuff with this. So that's pretty much it, for the video and for the math operations. I think it's pretty straightforward to learn basic math. Now, there are like statistical modules, and there's the math module that we can add to this to kind of give it more functions and make it a lot more easier. So what I'll probably end up doing in a future video, I'll probably go over those modules specifically and then get more in depth. This was basically more of an attempt to show an overview of what you can do with math and what you can do with Python in there without using any modules. But again, future videos we'll go over the modules and kind of break those down. Alright, well, that's it for this video. I guess I'll talk to you guys later.